Good morning. We're back to actually editing this morning rather than writing. I'll pull it up. There'll be a link in the description. So I wrote this a bit more than a year ago, I guess. It was originally just a web novel on royalroad.com that got basically no traction, but I wrote it because I was burned out on the main thing that I was writing. It's a martial arts fantasy story with a lot of the sort of world building that I enjoy reading. There's a kind of like multicultural milieu going on. There's a lot of political and legal history to the cultures that have interacted over the past few hundred years. One of my pet peeves in fantasy is when you have a civilization that's lasted for like 2,000 years without any kind of real cultural development or shift. And it's like, oh, the line of kings has ruled uninterrupted for 2,000 years, and we've, remained in the exact same tech level this entire time, having no need to innovate or accidentally discover anything or to expand our territories or, any of that. Or sometimes you'll even just get one ruler who has ruled for 1,000 years, and it's like, goodness, that has got to get, exhausting after a while. So the main civilization here is about 300 years old, and is the kind of an offshoot from the remainder of an older civilization that was at a much lower tech level. Then there was an industrial spike where everybody was at a much higher tech level for a very short period of time, because then they were invaded, and most of their stuff was wiped out, and they lost the means to produce a certain bit of technology that, some people still manufacture, but in secret, because it's a martial arts underworld. You see, it's all mysterious and stuff. On the day Prince Kuro is to become engaged to the princess of a neighboring city, the bandit lord known as Callicles the Hyena invades the town called White Pepper. Kuro and the street boy Olivier, however it should properly be pronounced, find themselves unlikely comrades, plunge into a world of martial artists, ancient magic, and lone wolves who fight as brothers, follow the journey of the pauper and the prince in this fast-paced adventure, inspired by wuxia and Western fantasy as the two become gunslinger and samurai. And that was very short. You can see it was only 120 pages. So it sold pretty well, better than it should have, considering the short length. It sold far better than it got any traction when it was just free online. And so I started writing the sequel, and that I thought, the sequel should be about 70 or 80,000 words probably. And then it stretched to 120,000 words, and then I realized that one of the main viewpoint characters had no scenes whatsoever in the second half of the book, and that she had an entire plot line that went completely unresolved by the end of the book. And I was feeling very frustrated trying to figure out how I was possibly going to finish the whole story in a timely manner. And eventually, a couple days ago, after discussing it with some other writer friends, I decided to take the midpoint of the current 120,000 word manuscript and cut it in half, which leaves us some satisfying places that most of the characters end on, including that neglected main character. And then I can take essentially the second half, more like the second third, I suppose, and turn that into its own book 3 in the series, which will give me the freedom to add all those missing scenes from that viewpoint character, who really needs to have that plot line resolved. And I think that will be the pacing will end up much better. And we'll actually allow the second book to come out. It's now been this first book published March 3rd last year. It's been about a year, and I haven't gotten, the sequel to this very short thing out yet. That's very unacceptable in the independent writing space. And if you want to check that out, it's in the description. If you would like a free copy of that for review purposes, then you can I don't think you can message on YouTube anymore, can you? Yeah, mail me at mail@taylorclogston.com and ask me for a review copy in your preferred file format, and I'd be happy to acquiesce, however you pronounce that. Let me just throw a link here. Hello, Oscar. How are you this morning? But I've, as I said, I drafted very, very rough draft already of those 120,000 words. So I'm now going through, and in Atticus, I've done a lot of editing up to chapter numbers that do not actually match where I was in the original manuscript, because I've been splitting like 5,000 word chapters into smaller chapters. And we're just continuing on. I'm not going to give the whole context of the scene because that would take literal hours at this point. I believe I have too many main characters in this book at this point. We have like 3 main viewpoint characters and then 2 characters off to the side that we get some infrequent point of views from. Too many just in the context of indie readers tend to prefer simpler stories. 3 viewpoint characters might be too much. 2 viewpoint characters are often too much. And I really need to be having much simpler sentences than this one. Let's see. He was dressed. He... with... Actually, let's reorganize this. In real time. His expression had... Stolid is probably not the best word for my audience. He had usually worn an impassive expression before now, but turmoil. Yet, his frown all betrayed. His frown, the slight movements of his clean-shaven mouth, and the closeness of his eyebrows all betrayed inner turmoil. That's a much easier to read form of that. Hello, Bernardus. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. I'm well, and I hope you are well. I hope life is well in Brazil. Greetings from New Hampshire. It's very snowy here. I hope the weather is nicer for you. After a short Ready. Was the man so overcome that his confusion... that confusion or frustration had broken through his ordinary facade? Or had he simply stopped hiding his emotions in this moment of reckoning? Even this is really too complicated, I think. It's a 28-word, very many syllables sentence. Tap on her knees with alternate fingers like a fretful child. After a short, awkward silence, Michio finally pulled... Yeah, I use a lot of seemed, the word seemed, or the phrase seemed to. I believe I've talked about that in the past. I'm a bit biased against... I want to not make it sound like the characters are speaking from an omniscient point of view, and I overdo it sometimes. The seems can be overly filtery sometimes. Can be too much of a disconnect between the character's actual point of view and the reader. Kuro nea orkia, he said. Heir to the late Washi nea orkia. May his spirit find rest. I have learned the facts of your case. I have heard your testimony. I have heard your testimony and those of your household and the Princess Margarita Nea Caricia. I have heard the testimony of those ordinary folk of this town who remained following the attack of the bandit Callicles the hyena. I have listened to the arguments of support from the professional craftsmen of this town, by whose grace alone can a city's livelihood flourish. And this is deliberately long and overblown. He's speaking in the formal, legal manner. Weather here is crazy. The temperatures, when in the morning, are reaching almost 32 degrees, and in the afternoon it cools to 15. Now, I am is that in Celsius or Fahrenheit? I'm ashamed to say that I don't know a Celsius off the top of my head. In Fahrenheit here, it's been, going very weirdly between 60 degrees and like -10. Right now it's only 27. We are apparently having some morning fog. It's hard to know, how to dress for the day when the temperature might fluctuate, 30 or 40 degrees between a couple days, or sometimes even in one. This Sunday I went for a walk in the park when it was just a bit above freezing, and by the time I was done with my walk, I was really regretting having worn my winter coat, because the temperature was almost that of a coolish summer day. It was 60 degrees. See. Despite his attitude and facial expression, there was hardly a hint of emotion. Despite his attitude and facial expression, he spoke with hardly a hint of emotion. Let's just cut that out. There are 3 channels which can produce a verdict against you, Michio continued. First, You deliberately betrayed your people to an invader. Yeah, that could be confusing. Whoops. In the case, you deliberately betrayed your people to an invader. I have seen no evidence to this effect. Second, in the case, the professionals of your town refused to vest their good faith in your rulership. Though many merchants and citizens have fled, the craftsmen of highest renown have remained, as has a labor force which seems to me sufficient to sustain the needs of the town. Third, in the case you failed to protect your people against military assault. He went silent, and Margarita dug her fingernails into the many layers of the skirts covering her knees. To the layered skirts covering her knees, she clenched her teeth, desperately wishing the man would just get on with it. Finally, slowly, Michio continued. It seems to me, after much consideration, that these laws were not created with martial artists in mind, and it is undeniable that you were so attacked. I come before you today, neither armed nor armored, as I have not stood in many years. All of my training screams to me every moment that I am a fool, that I am unprotected to go about in the territory of those who surely desire to see me dead. That I walk unprotected in the territory of those who surely desire my death. Let's go with that. Kuro opened his mouth but caught himself and said nothing. Surely, Margarita thought. But yeah, this should be italicized. When I copied over from Scrivener, yeah, I mean, I can just cut that out. We know she's... Surely he had been about to say, of course we don't wish you dead. But that was not the proper thing to say at the moment. Michio raised his arms, palms upward. It is my duty to be capable at every moment of defending against attackers, and to that end I am to always carry a blade. It would not be expected that I could perform this duty unless I carried a blade. And yet what blade, so to speak, can a ruler wield which will protect him against martial artists? None, unless my lords have blessed him, and, pardon, Lord Orkia, that would be anathema to you and them alike. Yeah, the tiny bit of context here. The dynasty was the biggest nation on the continent. It was this big old empire. It was not very kind to people who were not purely ethnically, belonging to the same ethnicity as the ruling dynasty, and toward other classes of people. And so some of the furthest away cities in the dynasty all kind of banded together and declared that they were going to sort of unite together in an alliance, I guess. They would declare themselves free and no longer under the obligation of the dynasty. And the dynasty basically said, we will happily recognize your independence if you agree to these charters, and we will immediately remove all of our troops that are in the area, and will withdraw almost all of our demands for your loyalty. There are some basic considerations, one of which is that you be able to defend yourself against any invaders. If you cannot maintain a good enough defense that you can protect yourselves, then you're going to be a danger to us, because you're going to be providing our potential enemies with bases of operation. And so we will come and help you if you ever ask us for help. Both parties knowing, of course, that they would never ask that. And if one of the free cities of the Northwest are ever ransacked, essentially, then we'll do a court investigation to figure out whether or not you have broken this self-sufficiency clause. And so Michio here, he is an officer from the dynasty. And though he is actually ethnically very close to Kuro and Margarita, he was the firstborn son of a Northwestern lord who, due to a whole plot line that we see more about later, he chose to join the dynasty rather than have something else pretty terrible happen to his family. And so he has got maybe a bit of extra compassion for the people who belong to the culture that he grew up in and had a lot of pride in when he was younger, rather than the giant military complex that he kind of was forced into and has treated as his master now for many years, who he has given actual loyalty to. Like, it's not like he's looking for a chance to betray his masters. He is an effective commander who does his job. But he is here saying, I'm not carrying a sword here as I come into this meeting, and I'm using that as an object lesson, an example to say the charter said nothing about, it said you have to defend yourselves, but you had no way of defending against martial artists because they're basically magic wizards. And so I am declaring as part of my investigation that it would be unjust to hold you to this clause that you didn't protect yourselves. And I'm going to go back and make a case that there should be an amendment. Before now, martial artists have never attacked a city. There's a whole big socio-political reason for that, but that's not really important at the moment. So it would not be expected I could perform this duty unless I carried a blade, and yet what blade, so to speak, can a ruler wield which would protect him against martial artists and against my lords have blessed him? And pardon, Lord Orchid, that would be anathema to you and them alike. And blurted Kuro sharply. Margarita ground. That was not proper. Yet Michio seemed to take no offense. By the letter of the law, you have failed to uphold the charter of White Pepper. The advisors immediately turned to one another. Whispering. Yet, said Michio, almost in a whisper to himself. So that should be muttering, so that we don't have closer. My honor will not allow me to find you guilty. All conversation stopped. I will return home, said Michio. I will raise a proposition that this clause be amended for all in the Northwest, as raised voices. Ooh, let's just say voices. Voices rose just outside the door, including one oddly familiar to Margarita. Michio started, and immediately moved to a shelf upon which sat an old sword carved from jade. Not much of a weapon, surely. A mere decoration. Yet Michio took it up as though it had been on his mind from the moment he stepped into the room. Then he moved to the door, flung it open. And this is probably a dumb thing for him to do, to fling the door open. I kind of need it for the plot to happen. Surely the wise and intelligent thing for a military commander to do would be to stay inside the room, knowing that he has 2 soldiers outside, and to only act once whatever potential danger comes into the room. He's a bit hot-headed. It runs in the family. I'm just gonna have to deal with it. We'll say his head's muddled from all this stuff. Dropped into a low stance while brandishing the sword. Great. Crashes and shouts had rang out. Had rang out? Had rung out? Had rung out during the intervening seconds. Now Margarita, springing to her feet, could make out that the white pepper saw that the white pepper guard lay curled onto his side, reaching feebly for his fallen spear. Had he suffered a gut wound? A few paces away, a servant boy grappled on the ground with the soldier. This man straddled the youth and seemed to have driven a blade into the boy's chest, grinding it in monstrously with all his weight. No. The blade had not so much as touched the boy. It hovered just over his chest, and it appeared a thin, invisible sheet prevented the tip from piercing tunic and flesh. Leave him alone, Margarita heard herself screaming. The voice seemed to come from someone else entirely. You've already got him. You've no need to kill him. Then she saw the youth's panic face grow miraculously calm. She recognized it. The guard was killing Kuro. The real Kuro. Then the true prince clapped his hands to the soldier's face, and in a burst of flame and smoke, the man hurled himself away with a scream. Flame and smoke and screaming. The man hurled himself away. Kuro rolled to the side and scooped up. No, that's not part of this scene anymore. He made eye contact with Margarita for one bewildering moment, then careened inhumanly fast down the palace hallway. Once the true Kuro was gone, Michio fell to the ground, took his soldier's face in his hands, and examined the wounds. The man had stopped screaming, but now wept uncontrollably. Burns, said Michio, are the most painful wounds imaginable. He will never see again. Please, Lord Okia. Have the best doctor in town. The best doctor in this town uses pain. The commander lay his soldier's head upon the cool ground, then stood. That's clearly a dimension. You are clearly keeping secrets. Lord Okia. Was that a hidden brother of yours? Or has the hyena infiltrated this palace with spies and doubles? Even in that case, if you could not realize truth before now, perhaps I was too hasty in offering my grace, in assuming your general competence. There was, as usual, no emotion in his words, and the turmoil which Margarita had previously seen had vanished, once more, behind Michio's steely and impenetrable countenance. The clone Kuro at Margarita's side could barely speak. I don't, he mumbled. I have no. Be quiet, Margarita hissed, jabbing him in the side. Her heart raced. What was she supposed to do? No, let's leave that. Excuse Kuro's bewilderment on injuries sustained. Blame Kuro's bewilderment on injuries sustained during the hyena's assault. Head injuries. Would that make anything better? Should she claim there was another Orca heir, perhaps an insane boy they kept locked up out of public sight, and hope Kuro and the advisors went along with it? She waited too long. Michio spoke again. That child of the Orca bloodline, whom you sought to hide from me, is clearly a martial artist. He breathed. He wielded aura. I have been taught to know its signs. I will extend my grace and reject the obvious. And reject the least charitable explanation that you did not call him here in this enclosed space to assassinate me. Yet I cannot extend it so far as to ignore that you were incapable of fending off the hyena when you possessed a martial artist yourself. There is nothing more to be said. Michio took up his soldier's weapon and wielded it until the doctor was summoned and gave his diagnosis that the man would live. Though, as the commander had predicted, he would never see again. Then Michia Neoplinia see, I need to maybe remind that it's... see. Then Michio. Ooh, Micho. Let me do it real quick. Micho. Okay, that was the only one. Michio took up his soldier's knife and wielded it. Until the doctor arrived and predicted the burned man would live. Though, as the commander had predicted, he would never see again. Then Michio Neoplinia took his leave, ordering, since we keep saying commander, ordering the incapacitated soldier be brought to the camps outside city, along with a 2-week supply of medicine. For Cormorant Company would soon leave. Would soon return to the diner. It was not Kuro who executed his orders, but Margarita. The clone was delirious and feverish until long into the night. That was no one. That was a ghost. He whispered. It couldn't be anyone. His skin broke out in wheals of a sickly green color, and his sweat was oddly viscous. The same doctor who had tended to the soldier could make little of it. The illness seems alchemical in nature. illness seems alchemical, he said. The doctor was an ancient man of an ethnicity Margarita could not quite place. And it surprised her to hear mention of alchemy from his lips. Her own family's doctors had certainly never mentioned it, and she had not received the impression from the hyena that it was a commonly known science. You mean, she said with an uncertainty that was only half faint, that someone poisoned him? The doctor chewed on his inner cheek. No, not quite poisoned. As though some poisonous substance was already present in his body from a long time ago, and is now purging itself from the flesh. That's my impression, anyway. Alternatively, there have been cases, such as in alchemical skin grafts, where the artificial flesh breaks down. Similarly, when the body rejects it. Oh, said Margarita, faintly. The prince perhaps had some alchemical treatment when he was younger, and is now in a moment of supreme stress, suffering complications. The doctor shook his head sadly. I'll put that here. Such things have been known to happen. I'm afraid alchemy is beyond my knowledge, and I can do little more than prepare a potion which might coax the fever to break. He ground together various herbs and components, then divided them into several tiny envelopes and made Margarita promise to mix them with boiled water and vinegar every hour for the clone to drink. The doctor left. Itzko appeared not long after. You failed, she said. Yet she didn't sound as angry as Margarita had expected. The princess turned to face the hyena's personal bodyguard. The woman was dressed in a servant's uniform, as usual, but there was nothing servile in her military posture or her gleaming dark eyes. Can I be blamed for it? Asked Margarita in a tone of defiance which did not match the tremors in her heart. Should you be blamed? No. Can you be blamed? It's possible. Will you be blamed? I couldn't say. Well, snapped the princess, what am I supposed to do now? You don't think much of Master Callicles, do you? It seemed stupid to Margarita to speak of these things while the clone was in the room, but he was moaning, delirious, and Itzko didn't seem to think there was any danger of comprehending. I'll just cut that out. Perhaps Itzko thought little of his current comprehend. Remember their words. Or perhaps the clone simply was simply not intended to live much longer. Margarita adjusted her position. To stand solidly between Itzko and the clone, as though she could possibly protect him from the lieutenant if Itzko made a violent move. Just cut that out. The woman took a single graceful step toward Margarita, leaning down and speaking in a voice barely higher than a whisper. You've only set our timeline a little sooner. The army, much larger than the little company sent to investigate this place, will find my master waiting for them. It has been a long while since a conquering force of the Continental Army will have ventured so far from the dynasty's lands. We'll give them the opportunity they've bitten at for generations, to test their might once more against true martial artists. Sko gave a bitter laugh. You'll still have your little town, princess. Worry now about tending to it. Now, you have a choice. I could get my hands on the real Prince Orkia, and we could convince him to see reason. Or I could dispose of him and let you manage this feeble-minded creature. Which one should I kill? Which one will you kill, Margarita, by your decision? Yeah, I'll just cut that up. Please. The princess whispered. Don't ask me that. Can't you scare him off, bribe him into not coming back? Anything? You have 24 hours to choose, said Itsuko coolly. She seemed to enjoy Margarita's sentimental distress. I doubt I'll be able to find him again after that point. Then she left. Echoes check. While I'm waiting for that, I'm going to be right back. See if the camera needs adjusting. Okay. Right. Echoes check. 43 close repeats. I mean, this wasn't a very long scene, actually. This was in the basic document. This was only like 2,200 words, which is not bad by this story's metrics. Yeah, the repetition in here is perfectly fine because it's supposed to be formal legal language. I don't know what to do here. There are 3 channels which can produce a verdict against you. I'm just gonna say that. First, you deliberately betrayed your people to an invader. Refuse. Now refuse. Case. You failed to protect your people against military assault. I'm just gonna have to leave it there. If people are confused, I just have to kind of blame it on them at this point. I think by doing that I need to do a new echoes check though. Ick. Lovely. Okay. We'll just change this too. He must have been about to say I'm not sure about this here. I could cut this, but I like the pacing breakup. I find it. You like the plastic bags, Cat? It is my duty to be capable at every moment of defending myself against assailants. To that end, I always carry a blade. I could not perform this duty without one. I could not adequately perform this duty without one. Yet what blade, so to speak, can a ruler wield which will protect him against martial artists? None, unless my lords have blessed him, and pardon, Lord, okay, that would be anathema to you and them alike. My honor does not allow me to find you guilty. I will return home, said Michio. I will raise a proposition that this clause be amended for all in the Northwest as... Yet Michio took it up. The real Korra. Rolled aside. There we go. Yet I cannot extend it so far. Word counter. 82. And concluded, Cat, do not scratch your neck. Yeah, this is long. We're just gonna have to deal with it, I think. This isn't properly a web novel, certainly, so I can afford to have slightly longer paragraphs. having far too long paragraphs was certainly a weakness I had in the first book. I was writing too literarily, not that I was writing proper, literary high quality prose, but it was still too literary. Language was too formal, sentence structures were too complex, vocabulary was too high. Got a lot of complaints from readers about that. So this one is still considerably formal, still has a lot of complicated constructions that I'm trying to make more palatable to a more general audience. Trying to hit what George MacDonald calls not George MacDonald, Brian MacDonald calls the highest common denominator. Making your stuff accessible to everybody who is going to be able to approach it in good faith and enjoy it. It wouldn't do me any good to be writing in a way that, the people I actually want to read the book are not going to be able to easily access. The doctor shook his head sadly. Should you be blamed? No. Can you be blamed? It's possible. Will you be blamed? I couldn't say. Or maybe the clone. This is a quick and dirty tip. If you would have close repetition, if you would have even actual repetition of perhaps, you can just switch back and forth between a perhaps and a maybe, and you can kind of still keep the strength of the repetition while making it sound just a little nicer. You've only sped up our timeline a bit. The army. The Continental Army, much larger than the tiny company sent to investigate this place, will find my master waiting for them. It's been a long while since a conquering force of the Continental Army was ventured so far from the dynasty's lands. We'll give them the opportunity they've bitten at for generations to test their might once more against true martial artists. In the past, there were some elves who invaded from across the sea, and they enlisted the help of martial artists from this continent to try to take over, all the civilizations, and they did a pretty good job of it. That was one of the reasons that technology was suppressed as well as it was. The elves had considerably better technology to begin with, and they did a good job at sabotaging the human technological advancement, which was mostly confined to one particular very small nation. So they just kind of wiped out that entire nation, and the technology had not begun to spread very quickly because this place was not geographically very close to the dynasty. It's not like they were super close neighbors, and there was just lots of constant trading of information back and forth. As a benefit of that, the dynasty enlisted the help, though, of their sword saints, who haven't entirely decided exactly the explanation for them, but some combination of religious and magical and scientific enhancement and manipulation to create these superhuman creatures that really didn't care about the amount of power the martial artists had. They used some very just profane magic, essentially, to wipe them out. And that was what drove the elves away, because they're like, oh, yeah, we have no idea how to do this, and our martial artists that came from this land that we don't really understand are getting blasted. Our king was killed. Maybe we shouldn't have had him on the front lines, but we've never had to deal with people who could actually properly fight back before. So yeah, we're going to leave. And so in the intervening years, it's extremely hard to make a sword saint. There are only a few of them now, and they're nowhere near as powerful as the ones that they had hundreds of years ago. And so the dynasty has been trying to create other measures that they can actually like reproduce on a larger scale to fight martial artists if it ever came to that. It's good for them that the martial arts underworld has decided among themselves that it's against the rules to interfere in the politics of like the regular world, because they really don't want, you know, lots of innocent people to die in very dumb wars. Callicles the hyena is a rogue martial artist who is trying to stir up war between the, not even trying to stir up war, he's trying to wipe out the dynasty, or rather destabilize them and fragment them, while just, you know, doing whatever he feels like, becoming immortal, all the fun, you know, supervillain stuff. Okay. Let's go give a bitter laugh. I think that's going to be all the echoes. So we're going to go back to real time now. Ah, me. There we go. Haha. As though she could protect him if Itzko made a move. So now we'll do one of these, do one of these, do one of these. Take advantage of the different algorithm Google Docs uses. Does this actually reflect, I feel like I changed that first line. Apparently not. I'll cut that up. Commander of Cormorant Company laid his soldier's head upon the cool ground, then stood. No. She said with uncertainty that was only half fanned. Very strange that other software can't catch some of these basic things, and yet there are some basic things that Google Docs won't catch that other things will. Like the most optimal solution in terms not of time, but of thoroughness seems to be putting it into as many different spell checkers as possible, because it seems like everything just has some slightly different way of approaching text. No, not quite poisoned. Let me do a colon check to make sure that I'm not improperly capitalizing. Do an ellipsis check. Yeah, I think this is as good as I'm going to get it. I'm actually not going to number this immediately. Oops. Oh no, Atticus is acting up. This is not a 4,000 word chapter. What's going on? Okay, so something just very strange happened. It like pasted twice. I've got a kick out of this mode. I'm actually going to open up the task manager and make sure that Atticus isn't using some absurd amount of resources again. Doesn't seem to be, actually. Maybe I accidentally like had a double repetition of the V when I control V'd. Okay. That is much more sane. Gonna name this right here because this may end up being Margarita's last chapter. I like that. Yeah, I prefer putting a dash there. This may be Margarita's last chapter in this book, or she may get one more. I'm not entirely sure. I have a very messy epilogue with her in the work in progress at the moment, so we're up to chapter 22 here in this layout of the manuscript. In my Scrivener document, this takes place chapter 16. So I've been breaking up a lot of stuff so that we have chapters that aren't like 5,000 or 6,000 words long, which, you know, is all possible. Like, you're allowed to do that. Some books don't even use chapters. Terry Pratchett very famously didn't have chapters in a lot of his books, at least. I don't know if he ever used them for the ones that he just wrote himself. But giving people a breakpoint roughly every 2,000 words, I think, is good for pacing. But so yeah, this would be chapter 16 in the basic manuscript, and the basic manuscript goes up to chapter 33. So this is about the halfway point of the story, and then we have the entire rest of the book without Margarita in it, and the epilogue is her not really making her choice, but taking a very drastic action so that she doesn't have to make the choice. And that drastic action is extremely messy and strange, and I don't know if we're going to roll with it or if I need to completely rework that. So again, this may be her last chapter, or we may rework the epilogue and have that be her last chapter. But it means that we're coming pretty close to the end of this manuscript, and that's a bit of a relief. So chapter 23. And this will be meeting from Margarita's point of view. Olivier. I'm going to call him Olivier, even if Olivier might be how other people, you know, let me look it up. Yeah, let me look it up how it tends to be pronounced in different cultures. But yeah, we're getting a chapter from him after not having one for quite a long time. We're going to throw that in here real quick, which unfortunately doesn't strip the formatting from it. Oh, no, never mind. It just didn't do what it was supposed to. It just pasted onto the end. So the previous chapter we had with Olivier was it 11? Yeah. say Last King of the Elves. Chapter 14. So that was 9 chapters ago. We're finally getting another chapter with him. The second half of the book in the current manuscript is mostly Olivier having his adventures. So he's basically going to be one of the main characters of the next book. That's actually really funny. Olivier from the Low German Elfahar, literally elf host. He is the host to an elf. That was complete accident. I mean, of course, host is a different meaning here. Yeah, I'll worry about this later. Very bizarre. All right, an atmosphere of tension filled the little, just say tension filled the underground chamber. Underground. The guardian spirit. The goat-like creature had just declared Olivia was possessed. The goat-like creature had just The goatish, monkish creature had just declared Olivia was possessed. Elves? He asked in a polite tone. He asked politely. He never heard of those before. Who are they? Spirit shook its head in disbelief. I can understand you're forgetting this. Understand your people forgetting the spirits. The general meaning of, yeah, he explains that. Understand you for getting the spirits. The general meaning of you, boy, I don't mean yourself in particular. As you humans have always been a self-indulgent people. But the elves? How could you forget them? But maybe it's a thing most people know about, just I never learned it. I've never been to school, so there's a lot of things about the world that I don't know. Not that most of it was very important. Olivia got along just fine without learning whatever it was school's supposed to teach you. Whoops, what did I just do? A perplexed rumbling emanated from the spirit's throat. They came from across the sea, having eaten their own land and seeking more. They made a pact with those humans who knew the secrets of order to conquer the young nations of your land, and the banding together of their victims into one dynasty gave birth to whatever forms civilization takes today. Spirit scratched its beard. I suppose I don't know exactly what that form looks like. I do my best to stay out of things. Olivia tried to keep focused, but he didn't really find the history of elves. But he didn't find the history of... Didn't find this history very interesting, except for one particular detail. So you're saying martial artists helped elves fight the dynasty? That would be an irresponsibly reductive way of saying it, but yes. So this guy in my head used to be the king of one of those people. Rose used to be the king of one of those people. Yes, those of us who lived the ancient histories long feared this outcome. The consumption of the spirits gave them the authority of reincarnation, and Olivia sighed in frustration. I'm really sorry, sir. What does that mean for me? He talks about giving me power and not tricking me and being my friend, but also asking things from me. Later on, can you tell me what that means? The spirit chuffed in a very good-like fashion. There was once a time when fathers taught their sons to honor the spirits. And not interrupt the elders. I'm sorry, said Olivia. He was, really. He was also impatient. And was it his fault that his father never had time to teach him? Never taught him how taught him speaking with the goat people who lived in the forest? Please, will you explain what it means? History doesn't mean anything to me, but I have to live with this. I have to live with this elf in my head. Elf, corrected the spirit. Elves are plural. Elf is singular. Olivier nodded. Spirit poured and drank another cup, comically tiny in its gnarled hands, before replying. Your mother must have given birth to you in a place sacred to fire, a place where Firoze, that's his name. I had called him Wildfire previously. I thought, because of giant plot point later, that wouldn't make any sense as far as the name of a different character who has a foreign name already. It's mentioned that it's foreign, and so I needed to give him a name that was like an actual name, so I attached it to a culture that would have used, in real life, had a language similar to this. Place where Firoze's consciousness transfigured into the form of the fire spirits he devoured in life could slip into your body. That sounds weird to say your developing body. Your fetal body. That's still weird, but in a slightly different way, I guess. He surely desires to take your body as his own, but cannot do so without your permission. And full knowledge. Olivier opened his mouth to ask a question, but now it was the Guardian's turn to cut him off sharply. Do not ask me how or why. Do not ask how or why this instruction is imposed. The interaction between the mortal and the spiritual are illogical to you. I have long since given up trying to explain this to pilgrims and sages. Only know that Feroze possesses incredible strength and can offer you a stronger mastery over the plane of fire than you can imagine. He will tempt you with this power, first by small degrees, seeming each time to grant a simple gift. He will attempt to cultivate your reliance on this power, will seek to convince you that you can destroy your enemies and fulfill your desires more easily with this power than with the character and strength built from a legitimate effort. In the fullness of time, he will come to you when you lie a hair's breadth from death's door and offer you life, if only you surrender your body. Let's see, word counter, that's 69 words there, that's fine. What, become a prisoner in my own body like chaos? Fear scoffed. Who would take an offer like that? I've often wondered the same, the Guardian grumbled. It is something which seems illogical to me, and yet time and time again, humans accept that sort of bargain in their deals with spirits. Or they once did, when there were more of us around, when you venerated us. So, yeah, this is kind of the background for, I guess, how the Sword Saints came about. They made deals with spirits, except they actually managed to trick them to some degree. Which is why it's a lot harder to make a Sword Saint now, because the spirits have kind of caught on. You need new ways of tricking them to actually being your profane weapon. No, said Olivier. I agree. That sounds stupid. I'd rather die than be trapped in my own body forever. Voice came to him. A voice hissed in his head. One that was his own but did not speak his own thoughts. Then you can see why I do it. Why I do all this. It said piteously, his head jerked back. Quiet, you, he said firmly. I'm not falling for it. You understand? Thank you for the power you gave me, but I know your tricks now. You had your chance at life, now it's my turn. Why people live eternally unless we are cut down in battle. So I was by a traitor's blade. If you let me take your body, that immortality will pass to you. We can negotiate times and seasons for you to take control again. Even if you take your body only one day in a year, you will yet live longer than if you keep it greedily to yourself and die as a mortal. Assuming we don't die in battle again, or by an accident or something, a lightning bolt could come right down, boom, we'd both be dead. And you'd feel very silly. And you'd look like an idiot. During this conversation, the Guardian Spirit simply drank tea. It seemed to understand that Olivier was not talking to it. Wildfires. Feroze. Thoughts in Olivier's voice laughed through the boy's head. He was right about humans. You are a disrespectful and illogical people. Nothing that spirit said will matter, my good friend. My brother. I think I'll call you my brother from now on. Isn't that what we are? But see, you won't be able to help yourself. When I offer, you will accept. Perhaps not every time, but often enough. Once, perhaps. And then you will think, never again. And then, later, well, perhaps just once. And once, and once, and once will, in the fullness of time, mean I get my chance at last to walk and laugh and eat again. And then later, and then, I'll just say later, well, perhaps just once. Once more. And once, and once, and once will, in the fullness of time, mean I get my chance at last to walk and laugh and eat again. Olivier looked back at the Guardian Spear. Is there any way to make him shut up? Not without one of your human exorcists, if you still have those. You had heard of monks performing these rituals, spells which were supposed to cast out demons. We never heard anything about casting elves out, though. Oh, I'll leave you alone for now. I've learned the hard way in times past that sending a body's other mind mad renders them incapable of passing command over to me. I won't risk it again with you. A low hiss of malice came into the inner voice. So long as you don't lord your agency over me too much. Well, thank you, said Olivier. He doubted Rose could drive him mad. But then he didn't want to risk it for no reason. His inner dialogue apparently finished, Olivier rose and brushed dust from his legs. Thank you for everything, Mr. Guardian Spirit. I have to say, I really wasn't I wasn't expecting anything like this to happen when I set out. The Guardian gave a deep head bob that Olivier guessed was the same as a handshake or a bow. It was lovely having a visitor after quite a lengthy period of solitude. It gave a long, low grunt. Where did you say you were off to again? I'm looking for the Valley of 100 Bridges. That's where all the people knew how to use aura. It's where they live. Yes, I know that place, though they called it something very different the last time I paid it a visit. You say you seek it, then you don't know where it's located? No. Any chance you could tell me? The Guardian thought about this for a long while. No, it said at last. That secret does not belong to me, and it would be wrong for me to reveal it. I apologize, for you seem like a decent enough human, and I do not hide it from you because I find you repugnant. No worries, said Olivier, disappointed but not surprised. Another thought came to him. Well, I thought I might find a couple martial artists in a village by a rock quarry. Can you point me in the right direction for that? I'm pretty sure if I keep going, I'll find it, but maybe you could show me a shortcut. Spirit's eyebrows rustled. I know of the place you must refer to. There are a half-dozen quarries in my forest, but only 3 have humans nearby, and only 1. It trailed off in distracted mumbling. Oh yes, that place. Must be that one. You are a user of aura yourself, of course. Keep alert, please, and don't do anything foolish. There is a monstrous beast near your destination, and I would feel terrible if it ate you. The spirit gave Olivier a set of landmarks to follow, along with instructions on how to find his way back to the last landmark if he got lost. Olivier immediately realized that he would have stood absolutely no chance of finding this village on his own. He would have needed to travel more than a day further and hope he diverged in just the right direction. Yeah, I'll just cut that out. This brought poor Cole back to mind, who had, quite reasonably, run screaming off the path at the sight of the Guardian Spirit. There's that fellow I was walking with. He said slowly. He was a nice guy. If you know all these forests, is there any chance you could do something about him being lost? Maybe appear in front of him and tell him how to get where he wants to go to? The spirit let out an amused chuff of air, its nostrils flaring. Distance through. I have a soft spot for blundering humans such as those. They remind me of little fledglings. If he walks bravely on, he will find his trail again. I will see to it. Thanks, Olivier said with a grin. Then he blinked, and the very next moment he stood. He sat alone on the forest trail, his back to the enormous tree which had initially blocked his view of the enormous tree to which he had descended. He felt well rested, warm, and full. Songbirds chirped in the trees, and a breeze carried the mossy smell of Tim. Carried the vegetal smells of damp moss and punk wood to his nose. Olivia rose, looked around him, and turned until at the guardian's instructions. Rose and looked around him. He pivoted until at the guardian's instructions. He pivoted until he saw the first of the guardian's landmarks in the distance. A boulder that loomed out of the ground. A boulder that had what appeared to be a face. A boulder whose lichen seemed form a scowling face. Then he began walking and hoped the Elf King in his head wouldn't bother him too much on the day's journey. Just make sure wildfire, yeah, I haven't used that again here. Let's see, echoes, check. Olivier himself is going to have one more scene in this book. There's only a couple scenes left altogether. All right, before starting on this, I'll be right back. I'm gonna refill my water. Okay, let's see if my writing partner got back to me. No. Okay. Oh boy. So it wouldn't be a fetal body because he was. Just cut that out. Gifts. It's my turn. Assuming we don't get murdered again. Once, maybe. It made a long, low grunt. Yes, I know that place. Another thought came to him. Another idea came to him, is what that should be. Probably. Avoid close repetition. It must be. Okay, great. School's supposed to teach you. A lot of exposition here, unfortunately. Someone told me I should be just cutting out all of these scenes with the spirit. I'm like, it's kind of important. Yeah, let's just make this a little clearer. Cat. All right, this is what it's gonna have to be. $18.25 words a chapter. This would be Kai Dao and Eleazar's fight, which is only 2,500 words. Not terribly bad, honestly. Sperm correct. Probably going to be just cutting off lots of little words here and there. Cursed his reaction to the ambush. A raven. Cut Kaiteo's eye for a moment. About ensuring the enemy would come between. Goodness, that is fluffy snow. But deflection and absorption were two very different things. They there was no deflecting an entire planet. The even repetition of their weapon blows, audible even at the cliff space. The longer she held on, onto his back. It was a wild risk, but he diverted his aura from defense to burning away the arrow shaft, leaving a gleaming spiral scored head of spiritual steel that still hummed with. I guess if it buried that deep, it would have fallen to the ground because it would have gone through. Adrenaline quickly made the pain irrelevant, but it also threatened to shake Eliezer's body to the point of uselessness. He slipped into battle meditation, calming his breath and enhancing his senses. The pain returned, but he used it discipline born of long practice to push it away. Or flow back over his body, and he took a further risk by diverting it from his belly, pressed to the ground as it was. Threw himself prone to the ground. So his head and back could receive further protection. If he needed to roll away from danger, he would now expose his belly. At the moment, an arrow through the eye was his bigger concern. Would his aura stop it? Probably not, even though he formed it now deliberately against the kind of drilling assault first arrowhead made. Laser took in the battlefield. A force of 10,000 men had camped here recently. Old campfires, piles of refuse, and even the corpses of a few luckless worn-out beasts of burden littered the narrow valley. The skeletal remains of perhaps a dozen mismatched tents lay at sparse intervals. Elias's first impulse was as if they were simply the leavings of a careless and uncivilized army, one that thought, "Bah, take down that useless thing carried all day? I'll take someone else's later." But now he wondered if those tents, if someone had left those tents on purpose, perhaps to hide a marksman. The sounds of battle still came from above. The noise of battle still came from above. Winds rolled through the valley, flapping tent fabric and hissing through the grass. Between all the noise, it would be impossible for Eleazar to simply Eleazar could not simply heighten his senses to detect the marksman's breathing. Not to mention, the fellow might be able to hold his breath for minutes on end. Eleazar waited, but no second arrow came. There was no chance his opponent lacked the skill to hit a prone target when there was no additional height advantage involved. It was possible his opponent lacked the skill to hit a prone target without but hardly likely. Even less so. The enemy lacked confidence enough in their munitions' ability to pierce Eleazar's defenses. Were they surprised he had survived first attack, or was this simply a diversion to keep him from assisting Kaidao? I'm just gonna cut those out. They're just a little confusing. At the very least, the enemy had predicted. But to separate the fight, wasn't an unlikely prediction, considering they had sent the close combat specialist to attack a man renowned for his ranged prowess. Mid-air disarm or retreat to a potential battlefield with wide open spaces was far preferable to warding off a small agile opponent in a dense forest. It's not bad. Perhaps the marksman was supposed to follow up on an opening the first lieutenant created. His arrow could not find its mark without help. Surely the enemy hadn't gambled on a laser's first opponent dying on impact. This is still a little awkward. It's fine though. Strained his eyes for holes in the scattered tents which might indicate an arrow had torn through. There were so many rifts and tears from days of exposure and improper upkeep that it was impossible to identify. That is a search. There were too many. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. The noise from up above ceased. Eliezer held his breath. Kiddo must have won, right? In a contest of theory and form, there was no way he could lose. Of course, if that girl baited him into the fury, all that would go out the window. Gunslinger longed to roll over and look up the cliff, but even if he returned his aura to guard his whole body, that would be a stupid move. Well, nothing else for it. Kai? He shouted. I'm here, came a weary voice from up above. Eliezer angered. Lady Luck, you faithful whore, he whispered and then raised his voice again. Marksman down here? Got me pinned down. No he can get to you so long as you stay up there. Jump and he'll skewer you on the way down. You alright? I will live. It was close. Ramon focused. The gunslinger nodded. He was, as he had said, pinned down. But what was the enemy's goal? What if there was more than one? Might they be trying to bait Kaido down here also? Or Marksman Everton? No. No, that was dumb. Surely they'd have murdered him by now. In the case, one dead lone wolf was a victory. Now he has his revolvers again, which he didn't a minute ago. So I'm gonna say he dropped them into the loops on his belt. There we go. Let's see, Eleazar. Reached to his waist and drew his paired revolvers. He deftly released their chambers with practiced motions and flipped them outward, spilling 12 gleaming but very mundane bullets into the loamy soil beneath him. A halo of 12 more mirrored spheres manifested above the chambers and fell neatly into place. They're called. The plane of combustion imbued the bullets with potential energy to be released upon impact with his weapon striking hammers. While not forged of spiritual steel as the arrowhead of the marksman, some munitions were heavy slugs that would not be easily turned away. They blow fist-sized holes in a bandit-shaped side of meat. Then he stood. Still watching, he shouted. Yes, called Kaido. Eleazar nodded. Then stepped forward. One tent about 50 meters away was consumed in sun flames. It was consumed by flames. And the traces of flared aura visible through its rips and tears were immediately obscured by an eruption of pitch-black smoke. A true of arrows sprayed the ground between Eleazar and the tent, gushing additional pillars of obscuring smoke from their points of impact. Eleazar fired a single shot from each revolver, but knew he wouldn't find his mark. His enemy would be, as Eleazar had been, almost entirely focused on defense, not to mention moving with the deliberate intent to evade an attack from Eleazar's position. Alchemical smoke bombs. Useful damn things. To the right, called Kaido. Gunslinger Grinchen charged toward the next tent on the right, maybe 20 meters from the one marksman had originally used. I had a few people who read the first version of the scene say they were really confused by the smoke because I never directly said the marksman was using it. They just couldn't figure out why the smoke was suddenly there. But, you know, that's fair. I need to be more causal. The gunslinger grinned and charged toward the next tent on the right, maybe 20 meters from the marksman's first. Both were now hidden by rolling black wisps that seemed to devour the sunlight, but he remembered where. He doubled back. Eleazar hurled himself to the ground just as another huge arrow passed above him. He squeezed out 4 rounds along the arrow's vector. Did I get him? I don't know, the smoke has spread too much. Now the enemy will be changing his position, but Kaido called nothing more out, so he must not have seen the change. Did the marksman move to flank Eleazar directly or head for another tent, or only change his position by a few meters? The smoke surrounding Eleazar was strange. It obscured his vision more than ordinary wood smoke did, and seemed, in fact, to make his eyes want to unfocus. He blinked furiously, but the effect remained. As smoke was certainly product of L. Have already ingested antidote or against all its ill effects. with advanced of alchemy. Maybe the user could even had undergone surgery to render smoke invisible to him. That was unlikely, of course. The hyena had access to that degree of alchemical knowledge. He was approaching the prowess of even the needle monks, and their expertise came from centuries-old carefully guarded secrets. What do you think about jumping, Eleazar shouted. I prefer not to. Yeah. Well, maybe this guy would prefer either. You think he can see through the stuff? Kaido was silent for a long moment. Eleazar knew he must be running through scenarios in his head. He would lose the potential advantage of a spotter if the smoke cleared. Supposing Kaido jumped down, they would lose the potential advantage of a spotter. Despite the distance it traveled as the seconds passed, didn't dissipate. Like ordinary, but seemed to spread almost as thick as it had upon first billowing out from the enemy's arrowheads. On the other hand, the addition of a melee combatant to a one-on-one scenario between two ranged specialists, which really tipped the balance of combat in the Wolves' favor. Suddenly, another arrow hissed above Eleazar, only barely perceptible because of the faint sensation of slowed time. Battle meditation provided. Eleazar realized in horror that Kaido must have jumped without announcing. Probably to avoid attracting an arrow. The enemy had seen him anyway. The faint sound of impact came from behind Eleazar, but he was already up and running. He didn't have a perfect idea of the arrow's origin, but he knew its general direction. The gunslinger flared his aura like a witch before him, hoping desperately it would be enough to stop an arrow that would only grow deadlier as the gunslinger approached. There, the noise of frantic footsteps. There, the stomping of frantic footsteps. Eleazar rolled and unloaded all around. Unloaded remaining rounds in a chest-height spread, then fell prone, called the stealing combustion, and reloaded. He wrapped his roar like a cocoon around him, rolled twice to his left, changing his position without likewise providing the telltale sign of footfalls, and an arrow slammed through his left leg, shattering the shin bone and nearly severing the whole limb. Eleazar nearly passed out from the pain. His vision wavered with the strangely pale silhouette of a figure Might help you get this patched up. Yes, weekly gesturing to his leg. Kaido looked exhausted. Cleaned a short sword, sheathed it. Then kneeled. He was over this wound. Always wondered if I could do it, he muttered, cut an arrow out of the air. I never managed to cut one of your bullets. Arrows are bigger, grunted the gunslinger. These especially. Kaido did not respond. He broke the arrow through Eleazar's leg and pulled it free. Okay, echoes, check. The original word count of the scene was 2,513 words. I guess we'll take the opportunity in a moment to count these up. Yeah. Cut a few out. Swinging, that's good. I'll steal a different one later. The clamor of battle, that's a good one. No chance. Whoops. Let's take that down. Just passed out from the pain. Right now, throwing it into Google Docs. But also Threte. To shake Eleazar's body. Eleazar took in the battlefield. The leavings of Achaelis. On the assumption, that is. You alright? Yes. Good. Yeah. Probably gonna have to be good there. I think we're gonna end the stream there for today. Thank you for joining. Hope you found it interesting or useful. Enjoy.